Hi, everyone. Welcome to this spotlight sponsored by the Academy of Leadership and Innovation, Technology and Physical Therapy Special Interest Group. I'm excited to have joining with us today Ben Cooksey, the winner of our 2025 Shark Tank. Ben, can you tell us a little bit about your pathway to where you are now and the products that you're working on with your innovations? Thinking about what is possible within the products that we can support our clientele with. Ben?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and thank you for all your help in the Shark Tank process, by the by. My name is Ben Cooksey, and I, like a lot of therapists, I worked in outpatient ortho for almost 10 years. Now I'm teaching at a university, so I get more breaks and summer break and that kind of stuff. But um, while working clinically, I think we're constantly, as clinicians, bouncing ideas off of each other of how can I make this transfer work for that patient, or how can I solve this occupational problem or overcome this hurdle or that hurdle. And sometimes there are solutions in the market that are appropriate and useful for what you need. And then I think that more than most disciplines, we are the ones that can kind of pick out when there's a gap, where there's an unmet need or a poorly met need. So a lot of those conversations, logically go from that point to, okay, how could we fill that need? Like, what could we do about it? So a colleague of mine and I, just continued having those same conversations about one specific innovation idea. And, what starts on notebook paper goes to the garage with PVC piping and duct tape. And, the next logical step sort of just reveals itself as you work through that process. So we ended up creating an LLC, and then brought in a third buddy of mine who's just way smarter than either of the other two of us, that has some engineering background and tech skill. And so our first innovation was probably the most inefficient way you could make a product. A friend of mine who's a welder helped us build it. And essentially, if you imagine a rollator where the seat can go mechanically from that up position all the way down to ground level and back up, to partially serve as like a fall recovery option. If somebody goes down and is not injured, that they can, bring themselves back up to standing without having to call the squad or put, an older family member at risk, um, while still using it as a daily driver, rollator sort of option. So our initial prototype was, I affectionately call it the ugly Iron Man suit, and my buddy built it to withstand the bombs. So it's graded for like 600 pounds, and it's 50 pounds in weight, and it's got a not quite like a lawnmower battery that powers it um, a few years ago now. And it stands up, like in the event of a tornado, I might go hide under it. But just to get the works like sort of idea, um, for a prototype. And then we took that and found a patent attorney through a friend of a friend. I think the constant in this whole process, I hate the word networking because it brings to mind like tiny cocktail plates and plastic cups of lemonade and awkward standing situations. But it just hey, I have a buddy that has this skill set. And as you're talking to that person, they're like, yeah, I used to work with somebody that works in this environment. So it was truly just a friend of a friend that connected us to our first patent attorney. And he got that whole patenting process started for a utility patent for us. Um, and then once that was, pending and then now published and still kind of working through that process, it was, how do we sell it? Because
Mhm.
my skill set is joint mobilizations and dad jokes. Like, I don't know how manufacturing or marketing or product development really work, you know? So from that point, it was a lot of like stalking people on LinkedIn and like, oh, you work for R&D for this big DME company I've heard of. Like, will you be my
Right.
friend? Will you be my friend?
Hmm.
Which didn't work. Uh, Eventually, we just made contact with different people and ended up in touch with a marketing outfit here in Cleveland. And now we have a relationship with them where they're essentially kind of pitching for us. And then with the goal to eventually license products in the future, that they'll help with like the contract side of that. So then as soon as that first one is sort of out there in the world, the inclination from our team was like, okay, what's next? Like while we're waiting for that process to, the Lord willing, be finished, is, you know, that's not the only idea. So thankfully, over time, we've been able to meet people to make that terribly awkward process more streamlined. Um, so we
It's
got
a
a lot
long
of
process.
yes, and
Hmm.
there's no roadmap or guidelines for these things. So we ended up entering a pitch competition with a local outfit in Cleveland called Magnet, who's a manufacturing advocacy sort of group that has some entrepreneurial support programs, and took what was a very broad idea and worked with Magnet and had what they called an ideation session, which was super cool because it was like us and 8 engineers in a room with a whiteboard and just every different way you could think to address the solution we were trying to get at. And out of that came our next idea, which was ultimately what we ended up iterating on ourselves and with help of a friend and then taken to the Shark Tank event. Clinic that I worked in for so long had a couple of lymphedema specialists and was kind of known on the OT side as a lymphedema clinic. So we worked with a lot of those people because they obviously have, mobility needs and or have had falls or different injuries. So it's just lower extremity swelling and compression management was just something I encountered frequently in the clinic. And it's hard enough to get the garments and or pumps covered for people. But then even when they are covered, a lot of people just can't use them or can't reliably use them because you need range of motion at the waist and the hip to get down to foot level. You need a lot of grip strength to hold on to those suckers and strength to pull them apart and dexterity. And if you have hip precautions, if you have arthritis in your hands, there's just several barriers there that just aren't met by what products are out there. So there's sock aids and those little wire frames to put the garment on and pull on. Like, so each solution that exists kind of addresses some element of that problem, but not, in my opinion, all of them. So the thought was like, we need to power this, we need to mechanize this. This needs to be a push button sort of task. So Compress On is our second innovation for our company that essentially you put the garment in between two sort of scoops and roll it over. The scoops can then mechanically separate to make space for the foot. You can mechanically send it down kind of a declined plane, get your foot into it, and then mechanically sort of call it back up from the push of a button. Here again, I'm extremely pleased with sort of where we're at with the skill set that we have, and just we're out there. We're just some PTs that own a small business standing in front of the big DME manufacturers asking somebody to love us. It's just to see the potential in these things. Um, so I love the work, and I have learned so much from different mentor types and people that I've come into contact with, and being able to translate like what we recognize as a need in a clinical setting versus an engineer type that builds things and their mind is on materials and weight and
Hmm.
pinch points and that kind
Hmm.
of stuff, and like to find a commonality where you can have a conversation of substance and direction, but you're each bringing a unique view to the elephant, as it were. It's
Right.
just it's fun. It's a skill set that I'm nowhere near having fully developed, but I'm hopefully better at it now than I was. And I think
Hmm.
most people in the space of healthcare companies and DME, like they want to help people too, and they're in a similar disposition that way. So it's
Hmm.
just learning how to speak each other's language or knowing how to answer the types of questions that this type of professional may have, or what their bosses are going to want to see out of a product. So for anybody, I think the ecosystem in PT resonates to people where students learn from CIs. CIs had their own mentors, professors teach along the way. Like we all kind of have this relationship professionally where we have more experience than some and can provide kind of backwards looking assistance. And then also we are trying to advance our kung fu and need our own mentors and people that can connect us to things that we don't have. So firmly in the middle of that, if anybody is starting that sort of entrepreneurship, product dev state of mind out of the clinic and has any questions or I could be of any service, to lend a hand up in that direction or just to chat about stuff, I'm always willing for that to happen. And then the other direction, we're still out there looking for manufacturing partnerships and people that can help us take the next step. So I reach my hand up, and if that seems to strike anybody as their position in the world and would like to have that conversation, I obviously would love to do that too. You can find me on Instagram at Dr. Ben Crazy, which is a reference to an old TV show in Cleveland.
Is it the
Okay.
Torchwood website? Is that it?
Torchword, like forward.
Torchword. Okay, gotcha. All right. Thank you for clarifying that for me. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Ben. This has been a terrific conversation. I'm excited to share this with the rest of our membership.